The royal ship of the Veyari Empire drifted in silent majesty above the blue planet Earth. Its golden towers and crystal wings shimmered in the sunlight, catching the eyes of every human who looked up at the sky that day. For most, it was the first time they had seen a vessel from another world, and it filled them with awe. But for Queen Sarilith of Veyar, it was nothing more than routine. To her, Earth was only another small world in a galaxy she already commanded. Sarilith stood on the balcony of her throne chamber, her tall form cloaked in silver garments that glowed faintly with threads of alien silk. Her crown, shaped like a starburst, reflected the lights of the ship's crystal walls. She was known across dozens of worlds as the most beautiful ruler of her kind, but also as the proudest. Her words were law, and her gaze was sharper than any blade. None dared question her, not even her closest advisors. Another fragile world, she whispered to herself as she looked down at the planet. Another people who think themselves important. Her attendants bowed low behind her, careful not to meet her eyes unless spoken to. Sarilith carried herself with such authority that even silence around her felt heavy. That day she was scheduled to meet with Earth's leaders to discuss an alliance. The Veyari Empire wanted access to human starports, and in return, Earth would gain protection and technology. It was supposed to be a simple matter. But Sarilith did not like wasting time on what she called lesser species. She considered humanity weak, short-lived, untrained in the ways of the stars, and still crawling on the edge of their own solar system. When she walked into the grand hall prepared for the meeting, her presence drew every eye. Human diplomats, in formal suits, rose to greet her, their voices filled with respect. Sarilith only gave a slight nod. She knew she impressed them. She always did. Yet she noticed something else. Among the human delegation were not only politicians and translators, but also guards. Tall men and women stood at the edges of the hall wearing protective gear and carrying modern weapons. Most of them tried to look confident, though Sarilith saw the nervousness in their eyes. They were, after all, standing in the presence of an alien queen. One guard, however, stood out, not because of boldness but because of how quiet he was. He was younger than the others, perhaps not long out of training. His uniform was neat, though not shining. His brown hair fell slightly over his forehead, and his eyes lowered whenever anyone looked at him. Unlike his companions, he did not try to impress or to show strength. He simply stood there, his hands steady on his weapon, his posture straight, his gaze fixed on his duty. Sarilith noticed him for only a moment before brushing the thought aside. To her, he was nothing more than a background figure. She thought humans were all similar, eager to please, desperate for approval, and fragile in both body and mind. The meeting passed with words that Sarilith barely cared for. The humans asked questions about trade, defense, and learning alien science. Sarilith answered with short, sharp replies. She offered gifts of technology, but reminded them that loyalty must be given in return. The diplomats nodded, writing notes, smiling nervously, bowing often. Sarilith enjoyed the control she held. It reminded her why she was queen, because no one else could stand above her. Later, when the human guards were assigned to escort her through the city on Earth, Sarilith carried herself as if walking among children. Her attendants moved around, her like shadows whispering warnings about human customs. She hardly listened. The streets of the city were crowded with people trying to catch a glimpse of her. Children pointed, adults lifted cameras, and voices filled the air with shouts of wonder. Sarilith kept her chin high. She enjoyed their awe, but she also judged them. So much noise, she muttered. So little grace. Among the guards, walking close by her side, was the same shy young man she had noticed before. His name, she later overheard, was Daniel. He walked slightly behind the other guards, careful, as if trying not to be seen. He never looked directly at her. When his fellow guards whispered jokes to each other, Daniel stayed silent. When others tried to impress by scanning the crowd with exaggerated movements, Daniel simply observed quietly, his eyes sharp, but his manner calm. Sarilith barely gave him a thought. In her eyes, he was just another face in the mass of humanity. That evening she returned to her ship, where her advisors praised her for showing dignity before the human leaders. Sarilith accepted their words but dismissed them quickly. Her thoughts were not on humans but on her empire. She thought of how many more worlds she could bring under her rule, how many more rulers would bow before her crown. Yet, as the night passed and silence filled the halls of her ship, she remembered strangely the face of the quiet human guard. She scolded herself for the thought. Why should a queen think of a soldier? Still, his calm eyes, the way he had not tried to impress her, stayed faintly in her mind. The next day, the queen held another meeting with Earth's delegation. Again, guards were present. Again, Daniel was among them. When Sarilith entered the room, the humans bowed, the diplomats smiled nervously, and her attendants straightened with pride. But Daniel only stood still, neither bowing too deeply nor looking too bold. His behavior was respectful but not like the others. He was simply steady, as though his only task in the universe was to stand guard. Sarilith found herself glancing at him, just for a moment, before turning away with annoyance at her own distraction. Why am I even noticing? She thought. He is no different from the rest. But deep inside something had been planted, a small question, a seed of curiosity. For now, Sarilith remained the arrogant queen, distant and proud. She believed humans were fragile creatures not worthy of her attention. But destiny had already begun to weave a different story. A story where the quiet strength of one shy human would change the course of her empire, her pride, and her heart. The city of New Geneva buzzed with activity as Earth's leaders welcomed the alien queen and her court. Every street was decorated with banners, and every screen broadcast her presence. People whispered her name with awe, speaking of her beauty, her crown, and the strange way she walked as if gravity itself bowed beneath her steps. But for Daniel, the young guard assigned to her protection, all the noise of the city faded into background. His job was simple. Stay close, stay alert, and make sure no harm came to the queen. He had no interest in attention or praise. He was not like the other guards who boasted about protecting an alien ruler. Daniel kept his thoughts inside, speaking little even among his own unit. That morning, he stood in line with the other guards, as the queen prepared to leave her ship. Her attendants moved around her, adjusting her silver cloak and shining crown. The guards were instructed to remain silent, but Daniel could feel the weight of the queen's presence even without words. She was taller than most humans, her bearing flawless, her eyes sharp as crystal. When she entered the city streets, the crowd erupted in cheers. People shouted greetings, waving flags and recording every moment on their devices. Some even tried to push forward, desperate to see her up close. Daniel's fellow guards raised their hands, shouting commands for the crowd to stay back. Daniel, however, did not shout. He simply positioned himself carefully, placing his body between the queen and the eager hands that reached too far, Sarilith noticed. For the first time, she looked directly at him, if only for a brief second. His face was calm, his eyes steady, though he quickly looked away. She turned her head forward again, dismissing the thought. Later that evening, when the queen attended a grand dinner hosted by Earth's leaders, Daniel stood near the entrance of the hall. Music played, voices rose in laughter, and food was served in shining dishes. Human officials tried to impress the queen with long speeches about culture and history. Some even attempted jokes, though their nervousness made them stumble over words. Sarilith remained polite but distant. Her eyes were cold, her replies short. Yet once again she noticed Daniel. He stood quietly by the door, not moving unless needed, his posture straight and calm. While others stared at her in admiration or fear, he avoided her gaze entirely. It unsettled her. She was used to attention. She was used to being the center of every room. Why should one quiet guard disturb her thoughts? That night, when she returned to her ship, she tried to push the memory aside. But she failed. The image of Daniel's calm eyes remained. The following day, something unusual happened. The queen's schedule included a tour of Earth's cultural sites. She would visit museums, monuments, and universities, all carefully chosen to show humanity's achievements. Security was tight. Guards checked every street, every building, every shadow. Yet danger still came. As the Queen's procession passed through a narrow street lined with old stone buildings, a sudden noise echoed from above. A flash of movement appeared on a rooftop. The guards reacted instantly, raising their weapons. The crowd screamed and scattered in fear. Daniel's heart raced, but his mind stayed clear. He saw a small drone darting through the air, carrying something metallic. It was not large, but it could be dangerous. Without hesitation, Daniel stepped forward, placing himself directly in front of the Queen. "Stay back," he said firmly, though his voice was quiet. The drone shot downward, but Daniel moved faster than anyone expected. He raised his weapon, fired once, and the machine shattered into sparks before it could reach the Queen. Pieces clattered to the ground, harmless. The crowd gasped. The guards shouted, forming a protective circle around their Queen. Sarilith looked at Daniel. For the first time, she felt something unfamiliar, relief, even trust. He had not shouted. He had not boasted. He had not hesitated. He had simply acted. "Efficient," she murmured to herself, though she did not speak to him directly. Daniel only stepped back into his place, lowering his eyes as if nothing special had happened. That evening, the Queen walked the halls of her ship in silence. Her advisors whispered about the attack, debating if Earth was safe enough for her. Some demanded stronger protection. Others suggested canceling the rest of the visit. Sarilith listened but said little. Her thoughts were not on the advisors. Her mind returned again and again to the shy guard who had shielded her without hesitation. "Daniel," she whispered, testing the name on her lips. It sounded strange to her, an ordinary human name belonging to no prince or noble. And yet, it carried weight now. The next day, Sarilith decided to test him. She ordered a walk through the royal gardens built on the ship, a place filled with alien flowers glowing softly in the artificial light. She invited only a few attendants, and the human guards. As they walked, she asked questions aloud, though not to any one person. "What do humans see when they look at stars?" she asked. The diplomats rushed to answer, speaking of dreams, exploration, and science. Sarilith only listened half-heartedly. Then she turned her gaze, sharp as glass, toward Daniel. "And you?" she asked suddenly. Daniel froze. He was not used to being spoken to by a queen. His fellow guards looked at him with surprise. Slowly he answered, his voice quiet. "I think people see hope," he said. "When they look at stars, they remember there is more than their own struggles. It makes them feel less small." The words were simple, but they were honest. Sarilith tilted her head, studying him. He did not try to flatter her. He did not stumble over his words. He spoke as if answering himself rather than her. Interesting. Very interesting. Her attendants looked nervous, unsure if the Queen would be offended, but Sarilith only turned away, her expression unreadable. That night, however, she could not sleep. His words echoed in her mind. Less small. For all her pride, even she felt the vastness of the universe at times. Perhaps that was why the words stayed with her. Days passed and Daniel continued his duty. He never sought attention, never asked for thanks. But slowly, the Queen began to notice him more. She noticed the way he moved to shield her when crowds grew too close, how he always watched for danger without being told. She noticed how he avoided unnecessary words, speaking only when required. The other guards joked, laughed, and tried to catch the Queen's notice. Daniel remained steady like a shadow that never left its post. And Sarilith, though she tried to ignore it, felt something stir within her, a question she could not yet answer. Why did this quiet human guard seem stronger than all the rest? The halls of the Veyari royal ship glowed with silver light as Queen Sarilith walked in silence. Her long cloak trailed behind her like a river of stars, and her attendants hurried to keep pace. To them, the Queen appeared as proud as ever, chin lifted, eyes sharp, steps precise. But inside her thoughts, a small unrest stirred. It had begun with the shy human guard, Daniel. She had tried to dismiss him many times. He was no noble, no warrior prince, no brilliant mind. He was a simple guard, one among dozens. And yet, his calm presence refused to fade from her thoughts. She remembered how he had shielded her from the drone, how he had spoken simple words about hope and stars. The memory returned to her again and again, like a whisper that would not leave. Why should I even care? She told herself. I am queen of the Veyari. I do not waste thought on guards. Yet still she cared, and that unsettled her more than anything else. That week, Sarilith held a grand reception aboard her ship. Nobles from her empire had traveled across space to attend, along with Earth's highest leaders. The hall shimmered with light filled with music, color, and voices. Food from dozens of worlds was served on crystal tables. The alien nobles watched their queen with admiration, but also with suspicion. Some of them had already noticed how her eyes sometimes wandered to the human guard standing at the side. They whispered behind jeweled fans and golden masks, their words sharp as knives. Why does she look at him so often? One murmured. A human guard, nothing more, another scoffed. It would shame the crown if she favored such a creature, a third whispered. The rumors spread like fire through dry leaves. Even Earth's diplomats noticed, though they said nothing aloud. They were too careful, too respectful, but they wondered silently what it meant. Daniel, unaware of the whispers, simply did his duty. He stood near the edge of the hall, his weapon ready, his eyes scanning the crowd. He did not look at the queen directly. In fact, he tried not to. To him, she was beyond his reach, a star far above his world. But Sarilith noticed him. Even when she danced through the crowd speaking with nobles and leaders, her gaze returned to him at times. She told herself it was only curiosity, only study. But her heart felt differently. For the first time in her reign, Sarilith felt something unusual: doubt. Later that night, when the hall was quiet and the guests had left, Sarilith walked alone, in the gardens of her ship. Strange flowers glowed softly in the artificial starlight. She stood among them, her hands resting on the rail, her crown catching the dim glow. Why him? She whispered to herself. Why do I think of a guard when princes of entire systems beg for my notice? She had no answer. As if summoned by her thoughts, she heard footsteps. Turning, she saw Daniel approaching. He had been assigned to night duty, patrolling the gardens for safety. When he noticed her, he froze, unsure if he should continue. Your Majesty, he said quietly, bowing slightly. You may continue your patrol, she replied, her tone calm, but her eyes sharp. He nodded and began to walk past her, keeping distance, but something inside Sarilith made her speak again. Tell me, human, she said. Do you think your world is worthy of alliance with mine? Daniel stopped, surprised. He thought carefully before answering. Worthy? He repeated. I don't know. Earth has mistakes, many of them, but people try. They keep building even after failures. Maybe that is what makes them worthy, because they keep going. His words were simple, yet they struck Sarilith like a hidden blade. She was used to flattery, to flowery speeches crafted to please her, but this human guard spoke with honesty, without trying to win her favor. You are bold, she said, though her tone softened. Daniel shook his head. Not bold, just honest. He continued his patrol, leaving her in silence. And Sarilith stood, still feeling something break slightly inside her pride. The following days only deepened the cracks. Sarilith found herself watching Daniel more often. When he guarded the halls, when he guided her through human crowds, when he spoke with fellow guards in quiet tones, she noticed. And the more she noticed, the more she questioned herself. Her nobles, however, noticed too. Their whispers grew sharper. Some approached her directly, bowing but speaking with worry. Your Majesty, it is not proper to give attention to a human guard. Such things will bring dishonor to the crown. Already there are rumors. They say the queen's eyes have softened. Sarilith silenced them with cold words, but inside their warnings unsettled her. She did not want to appear weak. She was the unshaken star of her empire, the voice of pride, and yet she could not deny her growing admiration for Daniel. One evening, during a private council with Earth's leaders, the tension broke into the open. A representative from an alien faction loyal to the Empire spoke rudely about humanity. "Humans are clever pets," he said with a smirk. "Useful in their way, but not equal to us." The words cut through the room like ice. The human leaders stiffened, their faces pale with insult. Silence fell. Everyone waited for the queen's reply. Sarilith felt her pride rise, but not in the way expected. She looked sharply at the alien noble, her eyes blazing. "Do not call them pets," she said, her voice cold as stone. "They are not beneath us. They are people of their own world with strength you cannot see." The room froze. No one had expected such a defense. Even Daniel, standing by the door, lifted his eyes in surprise. The alien noble bowed quickly, stammering an apology, but the words had already spread through the hall. The queen had defended humanity. That night, whispers turned to storms. In the noble circles of the Veyari, the talk was louder than ever. Some accused her of weakness, others whispered of scandal. Among the humans, however, respect grew. They saw her words as proof of a possible friendship, even trust. And Daniel? He remained silent, though his heart stirred. He had never expected the queen to defend his people. He admired her more deeply, though he kept those feelings locked inside. In her private chambers, Sarilith stood before the great mirror. Her reflection showed the proud queen, perfect and unshaken. But her heart told a different story. She touched her crown, feeling its weight heavier than ever before. "Cracks," she whispered. "Cracks in the crown." For the first time in her life, she did not know if her pride was strength or if it was weakness. And at the center of her confusion was a single human guard whose quiet honesty shook her more than any war ever had. The sun rose slowly over the city, casting long golden rays across the streets of New Geneva. Crowds had already gathered along the Queen's route, eager to see the alien ruler once more. Her ship hovered above the city like a star suspended. In daylight, an excitement buzzed through every corner. Queen Sarilith moved with her usual grace, her silver cloak glimmering in the morning light. But inside she felt restless. The memory of the shy human guard Daniel stayed with her. His quiet strength, the honesty in his eyes, the way he acted without trying to impress. These thoughts haunted her mind. She had tried to ignore them, tried to dismiss them as insignificant. But she could not. Today she would face a new test, not from humans nor from her nobles, but from herself. The morning began with a formal council in the city's grand hall. Human leaders and Veyari nobles had gathered to discuss the expansion of trade and knowledge. Some alien nobles still whispered among themselves, casting subtle glances at the queen. They had noticed her growing attention toward Daniel. Their disapproval was clear, and they were eager to challenge her if she faltered. "Your Majesty," one elder noble said, voice sharp, "perhaps you should reconsider the humans' place in your plans. They are fragile. They cannot compete with us on an equal footing." Sarilith's lips pressed together. She turned slowly to the noble, her eyes sharp and unwavering. "Fragile?" she said. "No, humans are not fragile. They endure, they adapt, and they rise even after failure. Do not underestimate them again." The hall fell silent. Even the humans, accustomed to Veyari arrogance, were shocked. They whispered quietly among themselves, astonished that the queen had openly defended them. Daniel, standing near the doors, blinked in disbelief. He had never imagined a Veyari ruler would speak such words on their behalf. He kept his eyes lowered, as was his habit, though his heart swelled with respect. After the council, Sarilith requested a private walk in the gardens of the ship. The glowing alien flora cast a soft, colorful light, making the garden seem almost magical. Daniel followed, at a discreet distance, as always alert but silent. The queen did not speak immediately. She moved among the flowers, her fingers brushing the soft petals of luminous blossoms. She thought of her empire, of her pride, and of the strange feelings stirring within her. Finally, she turned to Daniel, her voice quiet but firm. "Human," she said, "you have impressed me beyond measure." Daniel froze. His training had prepared him for threats, for defending the queen, but not for words like these. He swallowed, uncertain how to respond. "Your Majesty," he said softly, I only do my duty." Sarilith shook her head slowly, a faint smile appearing on her lips. "No, your duty alone does not explain it. You act without fear, without hesitation, without trying to please me. You are different from the rest, and I cannot deny that it has moved me." Daniel's heart skipped a beat. He had never expected this. A Veyari queen, proud and untouchable, speaking honestly about her feelings directed at him, a simple human guard. He lowered his gaze, unsure how to respond, unsure if he even deserved such attention. "Your Majesty," he began, but she raised her hand gently, stopping him. "Do not speak yet," she said. "I must speak first." Her eyes, usually so sharp and commanding, softened. "I have spent my life knowing only pride, only power, only command. I have ruled worlds, defeated enemies, and commanded loyalty. I have never felt this before, this admiration, this care for another being. And yet I feel it for you, Daniel. A human." The words hung in the air like fragile crystal. Daniel's breath caught. He looked at her now, his shy demeanor betraying the shock in his heart. I respect you, Your Majesty," he said finally. "More than I could ever speak. I have always admired your strength, your mind, your presence. But I never imagined that you might notice me." Sarilith's faint smile widened. "I notice you," she said simply. "And I will not hide it any longer. Perhaps it shocks others. Perhaps it breaks tradition. But I do not care. I value honesty. I value courage. I value you." Daniel's eyes met hers fully for the first time. There was awe, but also warmth. He had spent weeks quietly observing her, learning her ways, understanding her rules, yet he had never expected her to see him, not as a human guard, but as an equal in some strange, unspoken way. I do not know what to say," he admitted. "I only know that I will never leave your side. I will protect you always if you wish it." The queen studied him, her pride slowly giving way to something new. "Then perhaps that is enough," she said. The news of the queen's feelings did not remain a secret for long. Among the Veyari nobles it spread like wildfire. Some were horrified, convinced that the queen had broken tradition and exposed herself to ridicule. Others watched with quiet curiosity, wondering what this would mean for the empire. On Earth, however, the story traveled differently. Humans were amazed. A powerful alien queen, proud and untouchable, had admitted admiration, perhaps even love, for one of their own. It became a symbol of hope, a proof that even the most distant and powerful beings could see the worth in humanity. Yet the real challenge was not the gossip, nor the whispers. It was the danger that still lingered. Some alien factions, jealous of the queen's attention, had already begun plotting. They saw Daniel as a threat, not for what he could do, but for what he represented, the queen's heart, and the possibility that a human might rise in influence among the Veyari. The first true test came unexpectedly. A meeting with the alien faction loyal to the queen's rivals was scheduled aboard the ship. The representative spoke with sharp words, testing the queen, questioning her judgment, and subtly mocking the humans in attendance. Sarilith stood tall, her silver cloak gleaming. She did not falter. She spoke with clarity, defending both Daniel and humanity, her voice firm yet calm. I will not allow insult or fear to cloud judgment, she said. A human guard stands beside me with courage and honesty. If that is your shame, it is yours alone, not mine. The room fell silent. Even the rivals were stunned by her directness. For the first time, Daniel realized the true strength of the queen, not in her crown, not in her title, but in her heart and her integrity. Later, when the room emptied and only a few attendants remained, Sarilith approached Daniel quietly. You were right, she said softly. You do not need to impress. You only need to be honest. And that honesty has opened my eyes in ways I never expected. Daniel nodded, his shyness still present, but tempered now by respect and courage. And I will continue to serve, Your Majesty. Always. Sarilith studied him, seeing something beyond fear, beyond rank, beyond expectation. I believe, she said quietly, that the universe has brought us together for a reason. Perhaps not all will understand, but we will face them together. Daniel's heart beat faster than ever. He had never imagined that a Veari queen would say such words to him. And yet here they were, standing in the alien garden, a human and a queen, united not by command but by mutual respect and unspoken admiration. For the first time in her life, Sarilith felt something softer than pride, something warmer, something that made her see beyond herself, beyond her empire and even beyond tradition. And Daniel, shy as he was, felt something stronger than fear, something that made him understand that his quiet honesty, his steady courage, and his simple respect had already changed a queen and perhaps the universe itself. The city of New Geneva was calm that morning, but tension lingered like a quiet storm. The news of Queen Sarilith's feelings for Daniel, the shy human guard, had spread through both human and alien communities. Whispers of admiration and criticism traveled through every hall, every street, every corridor of her ship. Some nobles were outraged, certain that a human had no place near a queen. Others were curious, watching closely to see what the outcome would be. For Daniel, nothing had changed in his routine. He remained vigilant, standing quietly by the queen's side, ready to act at any moment. But he sensed that today would be different. The calm was deceptive. Something was coming. He could feel it in the air. Sarilith, meanwhile, walked among the glowing alien gardens aboard her ship. The soft light of luminous flowers reflected in her eyes. She had not been this restless for decades. Her pride, once unshakable, now shared space with something new. Hope. And it was a hope tied to the human guard who had captured her attention. The morning began with a message from an alien faction loyal to the queen's rivals. Their words were clear. They would challenge her rule if she continued to favor humanity. Their threat was simple: either abandon the human guard or face consequences for herself and her empire. The queen read the message, her lips pressing together. For a moment her pride flared. How dare they question her decisions? How dare they challenge her judgment? And yet, she looked at Daniel, standing quietly in the room, and felt a calm she had not known before. No, she said softly, aloud to no one but herself. I will not bow to fear. I will not abandon honesty. And I will not abandon him. Daniel's eyes lifted when he heard her words. He had expected the queen to hesitate, to follow tradition, to distance herself from him for safety. But instead, she had chosen courage, not the kind of courage that won battles, but the kind that changes hearts and minds. Later that day, the coup attempt began. Small groups of alien agents loyal to the opposing faction tried to disrupt the city in the queen's presence. They sought to capture her, to use Daniel as leverage, to force the queen into submission. But Daniel was ready. His heart raced, but his mind remained calm. He moved with quiet precision, guiding the queen away from danger, positioning himself between threats and her with unwavering focus. Other guards acted quickly, but Daniel anticipated moves before they were made. Sarilith observed him closely. For the first time, she saw a human not as fragile, not as weak, but as capable, brave, and decisive. Every step he took was filled with intention, every choice calculated yet confident. She realized that she had underestimated humanity. Not all humans, but perhaps the best of them. The conflict grew, but it did not last long. Daniel's quick thinking and calm leadership helped prevent any serious harm. The opposing faction was stopped, their plans revealed, and the queen remained unharmed. Human officials and Veyari nobles alike watched in awe. No one could deny that the guard had saved the day, not with arrogance or force, but with patience, observation, and courage. After the danger passed, the queen called a council. The room was filled with tension as nobles, advisors, and human leaders waited. Sarilith stood tall, her silver cloak gleaming. Daniel remained at her side, quiet as ever, but his eyes showed determination and respect. She spoke clearly, without hesitation. "Today we have seen proof of something important," she said. "Strength is not only in power, in armies, or in titles. Strength is in honesty, courage, and loyalty. Daniel has shown all of these qualities quietly and without seeking praise. He has reminded me, and all of you, that true worth is not measured by birth or rank, but by action and heart." The room fell silent, then slowly applause began. Humans clapped first, followed by some alien nobles who had started to recognize the value of humility and courage. Even those who had opposed her found themselves reconsidering their judgments. Later, in the quiet of her private chambers, Sarilith approached Daniel. The events of the day had not shaken him. He remained calm, collected, and entirely devoted to his duty. She looked at him with a soft expression, no longer the distant queen of before. "You were right," she said. "Strength is more than pride. It is trust, honesty, and courage. Today you showed me that, and in doing so, you changed more than my mind. You changed my heart." Daniel lowered his eyes, shy as ever, but he felt a warmth inside. "Your Majesty," he said quietly, "I only did what I could. I would do it again without hesitation." She smiled softly this time, her arrogance gone, replaced by admiration and care. "And I would follow that courage, Daniel, anywhere." The weeks that followed were filled with small but meaningful changes. The Queen and the human guard continued their work together. The Veyari nobles learned to respect him, not because of his title or wealth, but because of his deeds. Humans began to gain confidence, inspired by the recognition from a ruler so far beyond their world. Everywhere the Queen went, Daniel was by her side. Crowds of humans cheered, not just for the Queen, but for the guard who had proven that even the simplest among them could stand with dignity, courage, and honor. Sarilith herself changed. She was no longer the queen whose pride isolated her. She listened more, observed more, and valued the judgment of others, not above her own, but alongside it. And every time she looked at Daniel, she felt a quiet happiness, a sense of connection she had never known before. In private moments, they shared simple conversations. They spoke of stars, of humanity, of distant worlds, and of small dreams. Daniel remained humble, never claiming to be more than he was. Sarilith remained regal, never lowering her standards, yet she learned to soften her pride in his presence. Together they became a balance, a ruler and a guard, a queen and a human, united by respect and admiration. Their story, though unusual, became a symbol of hope across worlds. Humans began to see themselves differently, realizing that courage, honesty, and loyalty were traits that could elevate them beyond expectation. Aliens began to reconsider how they judged others, understanding that worth is not always obvious, and that humility and observation are as valuable as power and wealth. One evening, as the twin suns of Earth's sky began to set, casting golden light across the ship's gardens, Sarilith and Daniel walked together. The air was filled with the soft hum of alien flowers and the distant sounds of the city below. "You have changed more than my perception of humans," Sarilith said quietly, glancing at him. "You have changed me." Daniel smiled faintly, his usual shyness softened by quiet pride. "And you have changed how I see myself, Your Majesty. I never thought a human could matter so much to someone like you." Sarilith paused, studying him for a long moment. You have reminded me that strength is not only about command or crown, it is about heart. And you have a heart that is stronger than many I have known. For the first time they walked not as queen and guard, but as two beings who had earned each other's respect and trust. By the time the Veyari and human worlds formally recognized the events, it was clear that nothing would ever be the same. The human guard had proven that courage and honesty could cross the boundaries of species, and the queen had shown that pride and strength can coexist with admiration and care. What had shocked the universe, an arrogant alien queen falling for a shy human guard, became a story of inspiration, reminding everyone that even in a vast galaxy, humility, loyalty, and courage could bridge worlds. Sarilith's crown remained on her head, shining as brightly as ever. But now it was lighter. She no longer wore it alone. And Daniel, once shy and overlooked, had become a symbol, not of power, but of true, enduring strength. Together, they faced the future, a queen and a guard, an empire and a world, united not by tradition, but by heart.